Welcome back, Gothamites. If you're new here, hi. I'm Londyn, aka History of the Batman. So the other day on Instagram, which is at History of the Batman, if you're not following, you really should, I did this poll because I didn't know which topic I wanted to talk about next on this channel. So I had you guys who are Gothamites on Instagram choose whether or not this video would be about all of the people that Batman has killed in his history or all of the Batman films that were canceled. Literally the margin is so close. It was almost like a tie for such a long time. But this topic won, so that's what we're talking about today in this video. I think people are interested in this topic because Batman doesn't kill, right? He has the very modern moral code that he does not kill or he doesn't use firearms. For many Batman fans, I believe that there are two very strong myths within the Dark Knight's 80-year history. One, which is my favorite topic to discuss of all time, that I have dubbed the Batman God Complex, which if you're like, I want to know more about that, I did an entire video about it for DC Comics DC Fans channel, and I'll put that in the description below because literally that is like my favorite thing to discuss, which in a nutshell says that with enough prep time and the right bat suit and the right everything, Batman can defeat anybody he is up against, no matter who or what being it is, even though he is literally just a man, which I believe we all enjoy Batman because he is just a man. So it is rather a complex, if you feel me. But that is definitely a myth because Batman has failed many, many times. But I do believe that is an endearing characteristic of the Batman and all of his stories. I think that is myth number one. And myth number two that many people believe is that Batman has never killed anybody. Well, guess what? And I understand if people believe that because ever since really the 1950s, Batman has not killed many people. And there is a very modern understanding of Batman saying, don't kill your enemies, you can get justice without killing them. For today's video, we're going to talk about this myth. And we're going to go through his entire history, seeing the times that Batman has killed his enemies and why. And after we highlight these instances, we'll see if whether or not Batman's modern moral code of not killing is a necessity within his crusade for justice. But before we begin our look into Batman's murderous history, that sounds so bad, but this is going to be fun. I'm excited. Why don't you subscribe to this channel and become part of this wonderful Gothamite community? Now, before we start on all of the killings and deaths, I actually really quick want to talk to you guys about San Diego Comic-Con, which is in 2 weeks. Actually now less than 2 weeks. But if you don't care at all about San Diego Comic-Con, if you're like, I'm not going, so I don't care, then I will put the time where you can skip right here and you can just go to it and that will be the start of our video. But I am very excited to say that on Friday, July 19th, which is part of Comic-Con International, I will be moderating a Batman panel called A Fan Celebration of Batman in Animation. And it'll be at noon, it's from noon to 1, and it will be in the Horton Grand Theater. I have put together a really fun panel of creators that have helped bring to life Batman in animation over the last almost 3 decades. We will have Kevin Altieri, who has been a storyboard artist and director on shows such as Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, and Young Justice, and a director on films such as Batman Mask of the Phantasm. We have Dan Riba, who is also a storyboard artist and director on shows such as Batman the Animated Series, The New Batman Adventures, and Batman Beyond. And we have Mike Goguen, who is an artist on tons of shows such as BTAS, The New Batman Adventures, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, Young Justice, and films such as Justice League The New Frontier and Batman The Dark Knight Returns. And on this panel, we are just going to be celebrating Batman and discussing their work on these TV shows and these films and how Batman in animation has been a definitive part of understanding and celebrating the Caped Crusader over the last 3 decades and overall understanding this amazing DC icon for the last 80 years. If you are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, please come. You like Batman, you're watching this video. I am excited and I hope to see you guys there, and I will put all of the information that I just told you about this panel in the description if you want to check out the schedule on the official Comic-Con website and all of that good stuff. Okay, so back to talking about Batman and his history of killing in DC Comics. Now, I do want to put a disclaimer, just so we can keep it consistent. I am only going to be discussing times that deal within mainstream comic book Batman canon. I'm not going to be talking about a Batman that is part of an Elseworlds or a Batman that is part of the huge DC multiverse. Whether or not it's in pre-crisis continuity or it's retconned, if it was canon at one point in time and not just an alternate universe type story, I'm counting it. So, for instance, we will not be highlighting stories such as the time that Batman burned criminals alive on the docks in Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder series, because that is part of the Dark Knight universe and not canon. We are not going to be talking about Batman killing Dracula in Doug Moench's Batman and Dracula Red Rain, or all the other murders that Batman committed within that Vampire Batman series, because it is an Elseworld series. Or we're not going to be talking about Thomas Wayne's Batman, who killed Reverse Flash and probably other people at the end of Jeff Johns' Flashpoint series within the Flashpoint timeline. So those are just some examples to give you an idea of what we won't be talking about. The era that Batman has killed the most is, of course, in his debut era, in the first years that he was in National Publications, aka DC Comics. I mean, in his debut story in 1939's Detective Comics 27 and Bill Finger's The Case of the Chemical Syndicate, Batman does kill somebody. And it's like, that's a good thing. After the Dark Knight learns that Alfred Stryker killed his fellow associates, while fighting Stryker, Batman pushes him into a tub of acid, and of course, he dies, with Batman even saying it is a fitting end to his kind. The very next issue, in 1939's Detective Comics 28, in another Bill Fingers story called Frenchie Blake's Jewel Gang, Batman is just tracking down a group of robbers that are just hitting up different houses and taking people's jewels. Yeah, that is the story. So Batman meets two of these robbers on the top of a roof and they start fighting, and one of them, who is named Ricky, he actually kicks off of the roof. And you think, oh, maybe he just fell and hurt himself, but later in the story you learn that he actually died from Batman kicking him off the roof. So technically, Batman killed him. Next story is 1939's Detective Comics 29. You see a pattern? Okay, this is a Gardner Fox story. Gardner Fox is fun. And it is the Batman meets Dr. Death. And Dr. Death is awesome because he is one of the first Batman villains to be a recurring villain within the comic book. So he's awesome. In the story, the Dark Avenger burns down Dr. Death's lab after throwing a fire extinguisher at him, and Dr. Death, holding a whole bunch of chemicals, drops them and everything just sets on fire, and Batman believes that Dr. Death has died within this fire. So he's like, cool, that's done with. But you learn, dun dun dun, that of course Dr. Death didn't die. No one ever dies that's a recurring enemy. But if you're like a random like jewel thief, you probably didn't make it. Like Ricky wasn't gonna make it. We just knew that. Which is a good lead into our next death, which is in 1939 Detective Comics issue 30, which this is the story that Gardner Fox wrote called The Return of Dr. Death. Oh, and this is probably one of the most memorable and brutal deaths within not just Batman's golden age era, but like his entire history. I still think this is just sick. So while Batman is trying to track down Dr. Death, he comes face to face with his main henchman named Mikhail. Batman fights Mikhail in his room, and then he escapes through the window, and Mikhail goes to look out the window to see where did Batman go. And then you see Batman swing towards Mikhail, who's leaning out the window, and Batman snaps the back of his neck with his boot, and Mikhail dies just draped over the windowsill. Like the snap, like onomatopoeia that pops up. It's so violent, considering this is like, what, his fourth story, and we're just out here putting people in acid, burning them alive, snapping their necks. Batman is a pulp fiction, noir type detective slash vigilante through and through in the first several issues. The next is 1939's Detective Comics issues 31 through 32, which has Gardner Fox's two-part story, The Batman versus the Vampire. In this story, Batman has to travel to Europe to save his fiancée, Julie Madison, from the clutches of the very supernatural Mad Monk. And in Detective Comics issue 32, Batman takes silver bullets that he made and put them into a gun, and he shoots not only the Mad Monk, but his vampire henchwoman named Dala. Alright, our next story is from 1939's Detective Comics issue 34. In another Gardner Fox story called Peril in Paris, Batman has to travel to France to fight the master of the Apaches, who calls himself Duke d'Ortaire. And Batman and Duke end up fighting on a runaway car that's just going insane. Before the car just flies off a cliff, Batman has the plane come above them. He grabs onto the ladder to whisk himself away and decides, I'm just gonna leave Duke to die in this fiery crash when the car goes off the cliff. And that's exactly what he did. He chose not to save him and like put him in jail. No, he chose to let him die. So I'm counting that as a death. Our next story is 1940's Detective Comics issue 35. We're back to the Bill Finger stories, and this is from The Case of the Ruby Idol. Batman is investigating a fencing operation within Gotham City's Chinatown, and then he has to fight two Mongol swordsmen who are the henchmen to Sin Fang, who is the ruler of this fencing operation. In this struggle, Batman pushes one of the swordsmen into the other one, who is holding a huge sword. So when Batman sees this, he pushes one of the guys into the sword, impaling him. Batman, he's tricky. He's like, oh, I see a cliff is coming up. I'm gonna let him go off in this car. Oh, I see his sword's right there. I'm gonna push him into the sword. Oh, I see he's holding chemicals. I'm gonna throw this extinguisher at him so he burns to death. It's almost creative. And every single time someone dies, Batman says something to pretty much justify why it was okay that they died. Like every time. Our next one is 1940's Detective Comics issue 37. Another Bill Finger story called The Screaming House. After Batman tracks down Elias Turg, who is targeting an imported vessel that is coming into Gotham City and wants to destroy it, Batman first has to save the vessel, which he does, but then he finally comes toe-to-toe with Turg. What a fun name. Turg, who is fighting with knives and swords, you can probably see where this is going, starts throwing them at Batman, and they all land on a door because Batman blocks the swords and the knives through a door. When Turg rushes to Batman, Batman's like, well, would you look at that? Those knives and swords are poking out of this door. If I push this man into this door, guess what's gonna happen? A knife goes inside of Turg's neck, killing him. So Batman is just so cool with impaling these fools, like. And then at the end, Batman even says it is good that he died because he was going to kill thousands of other people and lead them to their deaths. So once again, we're justifying killing these people. In the very next issue, Dick Grayson, aka Robin the Boy Wonder, debuts in Detective Comics 38. The next issue, in 1940's Detective Comics issue 39, a Bill Finger story called The Hoard of the Green Dragon. Batman tries to hunt down the kidnapper of two millionaires in Gotham City, which leads him once again to Gotham's Chinatown. It is lit in Chinatown, where he finds the leader that runs this opium gang, and the gang is called the Green Dragons. During a fight within Chinatown, there's a huge statue of the Green Dragon idol that Batman decides to push over, crushing all of the Mongolian henchmen that is part of this Green Dragon gang. And there's literally about like 10 people within this panel. So I'm not doing a body count, but we've gone through like almost 20 people already. Our next one is a very important and landmark issue within the Batman's mythology, and that is of course 1940's Batman issue number 1. This is another memorable issue where Batman has committed a murder or several. This is when Professor Hugo Strange returns and Batman has to fight him and his monster men in another Bill Finger story called The Giants of Hugo Strange. Now, these men, these giants, are actually Arkham Asylum inmates that Hugo Strange has transformed into 15-foot tall monster men that are now just terrorizing Gotham City, terrorizing innocent people. So now Batman not only has to stop Hugo Strange, but really has to first stop all of these giant men running around Gotham just committing atrocities. So to take down these monster men, not only does Batman get in his Batplane and start shooting a lot of them with an automatic rifle, which, just to note, he does say, I don't really like to use guns, but this is necessary. I want you to remember that when we get to the end of this video. But he also hangs one of the monster men by the neck from his plane and I'm sorry, it's just so violent. And even throws gas pellets at one of the monster men that's on top of a roof, and he falls to his death. Oh, you thought you were gonna get a break? You're like, oh, okay, we're into like Batman #1, and so it's gonna start slowing down. Oh no, the very next issue, 1940s Batman #2, is one of the worst things like ever. And not just because of Batman and even Robin in this issue, but just the storyline by itself for 2019 is problematic. It is another Bill Finger story. It is called The Case of the Missing Link. Professor Drake has captured a 15-foot tall caveman in Africa, has taken him from Africa, comes back to the United States, and decides that he is going to colonize him, all the while this 15-foot tall caveman, who he dubs Goliath, will kind of be a sideshow attraction. Goliath is not having it and kills him and kills lots of people and starts going on a rampage. So Batman and Robin pretty much have to take down Goliath. Even though they kind of don't want to harm him because it's not his fault. That's the vibe that I'm getting in this story. Which all leads to the very climactic ending in the circus. So Dick Grayson's like, oh, I love it here. Nothing bad ever happened to me at the circus. And it leads to Batman and Robin fighting Goliath at the top of the high trapeze. And literally, because of Batman and Robin, Goliath falls to his death. That story is rough to read, man. Read it though. Like, read it. Because I want you to feel uncomfortable too. Okay, our last major story within this pre-crisis continuity, so the early years of Batman, comes in 1943's Batman issue 15. So in keeping with this cover theme, asking Americans to buy war bonds to support the troops during World War II, in Bill Finger's The Two Futures, Batman and Robin go to Gotham University and talk to professors that actually put them in a simulation to depict what Gotham City would be like if Germany won. We see that if Germany won, Gotham City would actually become an extension of all of the Nazi concentration camps that were happening during the war, and everything would just be chaotic, and eventually Batman and Robin actually will die, even though they were fighting to protect innocent lives. And then if Germany didn't, the world would still be kind of bad, but Batman and Robin can still fight all of the Nazis and all of their allies, and in the end they would be victorious. When Batman and Robin have to fight the Japs that are Nazi allies, it literally says that in the panel. I'm not trying to be racist, I promise you. Batman actually gets his hand on a rifle. Now, keeping up with now the current time of Batman saying, you know what, I don't need to use guns. Instead, throws it into the tire of one of the big trucks that is carrying the Japanese Nazi allies, and the truck crashes and explodes, killing everyone inside. And Batman was like, yes, 10 points now. But he was like, that's literally what he wanted to do. So after this particular issue, you see that Batman doesn't even kill as much anymore. Because obviously with Dick Grayson coming into the picture and being a young sidekick, and Robin being created to attract a younger audience to read the comic books, all of these deaths with putting people in acid and impaling them on swords and snapping their necks and hanging them from the Batplane just wasn't the vibe that we wanted to attract kids to these stories. And of course, going to the mid-50s when the Comics Code Authority comes into play, had a stronghold with the content that were in these comics, Batman's killing days became pretty much non-existent. However, in the mid-1980s, after the post-crisis continuity comes into play, and many instances after that, well into the 2000s, Batman has purposely saw the demise of many different enemies in different ways. One is in 1987's Batman issue 403, which is in a Max Allan Collins story called One Batman Too Many. And this is when an Arkham Asylum inmate named Tommy Karma, who honestly believes that he is the true Batman, escapes Arkham, finds the Batcave, takes a bat suit, puts it on, and starts going around Gotham pretending to be Batman. Tommy's goal as Batman is really to find the man that is responsible for his family's death, whose name is Lou Spindle. He tracks Lou down to this nightclub and he beats him up, and then when Lou's henchmen start shooting at him, this Batman literally uses Lou as a shield, and Lou just gets lit up with bullets. And I know this isn't Bruce Wayne's Batman, I get it, but in the beginning of this actual comic, you see Batman, someone dressed as Batman, killing Two-Face and the Joker. And then you realize that it's just Tommy's hallucination, that he sees himself as Batman and he sees the two guards guarding his cell as Two-Face and Joker. And imagining these two rogues just makes it easier for him to kill them. But I just think those panels are kind of fun. Then there is the very fun Jim Starlin story, actually, and it is within 1988's Batman issue 420. It is part 4 of the arc 10 Nights of the Beast, where Batman is fighting the KG Beast. The KG Beast ends up in the sewers and actually becomes trapped inside of a storage unit. Batman finds him, and while the KG Beast is like, "Come on, man, fight me," Batman's like, "I will do no such thing," and literally just locks him in there and traps him in and leaves. He leaves him to starve to death. But because people didn't like that, since we're in 1988, it got retconned very, very soon within the next decade. So another 1988 story by Jim Starlin, which is one of my favorites from this era and a very underrated story. Jim Starlin's Batman the Cult, which is a 4-issue limited series, is insane, but so good. Batman is trapped in the sewers by Deacon Blackfire, who is a crazy cult leader, and puts him on psychedelic drugs and gives him psychedelic foods and literally warps his mind and has him chained underground. And then he has him become part of his cult, where Batman actually does go out and kill people. He's literally brainwashed. Up to actually Jason Todd, who is the current Robin still at this time. He's still alive, yay! And helps him to not only snap out of it, but to stop him from killing innocent people. Now, this next story, which is actually a 1987 story, which was in Detective Comics issue 572, which was the 50th anniversary issue of Detective Comics. So it has the really cool cover that has Batman and Sherlock Holmes, because Sherlock Holmes, of course, is one of the inspirations for the creation of Batman. Gives the same vibes that the Tommy Karma, that Batman that was in the One Too Many Batman, using Lou as a shield of the guns, kind of the same vibe. Because in the Mike W. Barr story, the Doomsday Book, Batman literally uses a man as a shield to stop the bullets from hitting him. So it's the same vibe. Oh, there's also another story that involves cars, and it's another Jim Starlin story from 1988, and is in Batman issue 425, and it is in the story Consequences, where Batman literally crushes a man named Jose Garzones, and they're in a junkyard within Gotham City, and all of the cars are stacked, all these junk cars, and Batman literally pushes it over and lets all of the cars crush this man to death. Kind of the same vibe as the big idol statue that crushed those like 10 Mongolians to death. Same vibe. This also happens in Detective Comics 613. I don't know what's up with junkyards and cars and crushing people to death, but that is definitely a theme. Don't know why. There's a couple of ones where Batman isn't Bruce Wayne, but other characters that have killed other people. For one is John Paul Valley. Of course, he was Batman in the Batman Nightfall saga. After Bruce Wayne's back is broken by Bane, he has to heal, so he asked John Paul Valley to take up the mantle. John Paul Valley is crazy and becomes Azrael Batman and is a very, very lethal Caped Crusader. Another really, really graphic death by a Batman that's not Bruce Wayne is Damian Wayne in Batman issue 666, which is the one that shows an alternate future where Damian Wayne could possibly be Batman. I'm not surprised that a Damian Wayne Batman would kill because he was trained by the League of Assassins to kill his enemies. So am I shocked that his Batman would kill? No. But another death that I think people don't really realize is in Grant Morrison's Final Crisis series. It's in the issue 6 where Batman does die after fighting Darkseid. Batman actually does mortally wound Darkseid, and later in the series, Darkseid dies because of Batman. So I'm giving Batman that kill, okay? I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't help the whole Batman God complex thing, but sometimes it does happen. And I think probably one of the most recent deaths is in Batman Inc. issues 1 through 2, where he actually is fighting Lord Deathman. And I love the fact that this character was resurrected from the Batman mangas of the 1960s, and I just love it anyway. Lord Deathman is an immortal being. Because Batman knows this, in his last fight with him, he knows he can't kill him, so what he decides to do is to shoot him into space, knowing that he will slowly suffocate and die. Eventually. That was just his response to getting rid of Lord Deathman. And that is very, very recent. I mean, this Grant Morrison story is from late 2010, early 2011. I think for comics, it's probably the most recent story where Batman kind of purposely has tried to kill someone. And after that, you don't really see it much. It is obvious that Batman, for all of the creators, writers in the modern era, pretty much have a collective understanding that Batman doesn't kill his enemies, nor does he use his firearms within his crusade for justice. That is just a well-known thing. However, do I think that if Batman did kill an enemy that really deserves it, do I think that would that take away from Batman's character if he did kill people? No, I don't. I don't think Batman would be a bad person. I don't think that would change his character, his persona. I don't think he's going to be out here like the Punisher, like killing everybody. You know what I mean? I understand that Batman tries to convey the message that killing is wrong, and that's what a lot of people know with their Batman, and that's perfectly fine. But I do love the Golden Age era. That's one of my favorite eras. I love that Batman is this gothic pulp figure that in like every issue was just lighting fools up and killing them. I thought that that was crazy. If you don't like that Batman's killing, and maybe this video made you upset, or you don't like the fact that he's just killing people left and right, to understand a character's evolution, you need to know all of it. You can't just nitpick what you like and just focus on that and pretend that the other stuff didn't exist, because it did. Those stories made him so popular, they were giving him more books and giving him sidekicks and giving him a bigger rogues gallery. So obviously the pulp figure that Batman was, that killer Batman, that gun-wielding Batman, was perfect for that era. So it's almost him killing in all of those issues, those early issues. It's almost a time capsule of the hero that we now know today. Whether he kills or not, as long as he is still the Dark Knight trying to do good for Gotham City, he will still be an amazing DC Comics icon. Thank you guys so much for watching this video about every single person that Batman has killed in DC Comics. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a bat thumbs up. As always, all of my social media is linked in the description below, so why don't you give it a follow and become a Gothamite. Check out my videos for DC Comics DC Fans channel. Check out all of the information about my Comic-Con panel that is happening in less than 2 weeks. And of course, please subscribe to this channel so you can become part of this Batman community. It would mean so much to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about Batman's crazy history of killing, and let me know your thoughts on Batman being a murdering machine and if you are okay or not okay with Batman killing. I'm interested if you are or not. And we will have more History of the Batman soon right here on YouTube. Remember, Gothamites, all about peace, love, and Batman. Bye.